hunters, who had 8 limbs and reflexes so fast that most recording equipment could not capture them fully. Every single one had refused the contract, not because the money was wrong, not because the job was too dangerous, but because 3 of their own kind had already been found dead in the past week. The Crimson Veil had sent a message to the protection community too, and that message had been received very clearly. So the council had gone further. They had called in the last option, the one nobody wanted to say out loud. They had contacted the Human Diplomatic Attaché Office and requested a bodyguard from Earth. And that was how Sergeant Marcus Hale had ended up standing in the middle of the royal briefing room on the most prestigious diplomatic station in the galaxy, with a kit bag over one shoulder and a look on his face that suggested he was thinking about something completely unrelated to where he was. He was not tall, not by the standards of the room he was standing in. He stood at 1.8 meters, which was average for a human male and thoroughly unimpressive to everyone else present. He had short dark hair cut close to his head, a jaw that looked like it had met several hard surfaces over the years, and a collection of scars on his forearms and neck that spoke of a life that had not been gentle. He wore standard Earth combat fatigues, dark grey, nothing decorative. His sidearm sat in a holster on his right thigh, and he had not removed it before entering the royal briefing room, which 3 of the attendants had already noted with visible discomfort. Princess Aliara looked at him for exactly 4 seconds. Then she turned to her counsel. Anyone but him, she said. Her voice was calm, clear, and absolutely final, the way that royalty speaks when they believe the conversation is already over. The head of her council, a thin elderly Velsharan male named Lord Sove, folded his hands and kept his expression very careful. Your Highness, the situation requires, I am aware of the situation, she said. I am asking for a different solution. This one is She paused, looking at Marcus again with the kind of eyes that measured and found things lacking. Insufficient. Marcus heard every word. He was standing 6 meters away with perfectly functional hearing in a quiet room. He said nothing. He looked at Lord Sove, then back at the princess. And then he set his kit bag down on the floor, unzipped the top, and began doing a quiet inventory of his equipment. That response, or rather, the complete absence of one, seemed to irritate Aliara more than anything else could have. Did you hear what I said? She asked, directing it at him now. Yes, Marcus said, without looking up from his bag. And I'm your assigned protection until the threat is resolved or command pulls me, he said. He pulled a small electronic device from the bag, checked its screen, and tucked it into his jacket pocket. I don't need you to like the assignment, Your Highness. I just need you to stay close and follow instructions when I give them. There was a very long silence in the room. Lord Sove looked at the ceiling. Several attendants found urgent reasons to look at the floor. One of the golden-armored royal guards made a sound that might have been a cough or might have been something else entirely. Aliara's violet eyes went very still. That was what happened when she was angry. The people around her had learned. Other species showed anger in loud ways, in movement and noise. She went quiet and still, like water just before it freezes. You will address me correctly, she said. Yes, Your Highness, Marcus said. His tone did not change even slightly. The briefing file says the threat escalates in the next 48 hours. I'd like a walkthrough of your daily route before the evening event. He looked up then, directly at her, and his eyes were dark brown and entirely steady, and there was nothing in them that showed fear or nerves or the desperation to impress that almost every other being showed when standing in front of Velsharan royalty. There was just attention, the kind of focused, measuring attention that was not about admiration at all. For one brief moment, Aliara felt something unfamiliar. Not anger, not contempt, not the satisfaction of superiority. Something else, something she did not have a name for in that moment, and she did not like that at all. She turned away from him. Lord Sove will give you the route, she said, and she walked out of the briefing room with her robes trailing behind her like the tail of a silver comet. Marcus watched her go. Then he picked up his kit bag, looked at Lord Sove, and said, ready when you are. Lord Sove exhaled very slowly. She will come around, he said, in the tone of a man who was not entirely sure of what he was saying. She doesn't have to, Marcus said. Let's start with the East Corridor. The evening gala was held in the Grand Reception Hall on the station's upper ring, a long room with walls of clear glass that looked out into open space so that the guests could eat and talk and look important while the stars floated silently behind them. It was the kind of room that was designed to make everyone in it feel like they were at the center of the universe. And for one night, Alyara had to be in it. She wore deep violet, of course she did, and her silver skin caught the warm light of the hall chandeliers and made her look like something that had been carved rather than born. Every diplomat and dignitary in the room noticed her when she entered, and she walked like she expected that, because she did. Marcus walked 2 steps behind her and slightly to her left. He had changed into a dark formal jacket that fit well enough to not embarrass her, but he had kept his sidearm under it, and his eyes had not stopped moving since they entered the room. Not nervously, not obviously, just constantly, the way a scanner moves, back and forth, calm and steady, taking in everything. Alyara introduced him to no one. She simply let him exist behind her like a piece of furniture she had been forced to accept. When other guests asked who he was, she said *security* in a tone that discouraged follow-up questions. Marcus did not seem to mind. He spent the first hour watching the serving staff. That was the thing Alyara noticed, because she was too proud not to notice things. Most guards watched the crowd, watched the doors, watched the obvious entry points. Marcus watched the serving staff, the ones carrying trays, the ones refilling glasses, the ones who moved through the room like they were invisible because everyone treats servers like they are invisible. She almost said something about it, almost asked why, but that would have required admitting she had been watching him, and she was not ready to do that. The gala ran 2 hours before anything happened. Marcus touched her elbow, very lightly, just 2 fingers, and leaned in close enough to speak quietly. *3 of the servers came in on the same shift rotation, but they're not moving like staff. The one by the east pillar has been in the same spot for 11 minutes and hasn't filled a single glass. Alyara kept her expression neutral. She was royal. She could do that. Are you certain? No. He said. But I'd rather be wrong and embarrassed than right and late. I need you to move toward the center of the room, away from the walls, and stay there. If I say run, you run and don't look back. She wanted to argue. She could feel the argument sitting right at the front of her mouth, something about protocol, about causing a scene, about how a princess does not run, but she looked at his face, and his face was not the face of someone guessing. It was the face of someone who had already done the math and did not like the answer. She moved toward the center of the room. 60 seconds later, the lights went out. Not a flicker, not a fault, all of them, everywhere, at once, in the total and deliberate way that only happens when someone cuts the right cable on purpose. The hall went black, and then the screaming started, and then the sounds of movement that were fast and purposeful and coming from 3 different directions. Alyara stood completely still in the dark. Her hand had found Marcus's jacket sleeve without her deciding to do that, and she could hear him breathing, slow and even, right beside her. Then he was not beside her anymore. What happened in the next 3 minutes, she could not fully reconstruct afterward. She could hear it, in fragments, the sound of something hitting the floor very hard, a short, sharp impact of something against something else, a voice in the Dreth tongue that cut off in the middle of a word, another impact, this one closer, the hiss of a blade, the particular silence that follows a fight when one side stops moving. She heard 3 of those silences. Then the emergency lights came on, red and low, just enough to see shapes, and Alyara looked around the hall at the panicked guests frozen in clusters, and at the 3 figures on the floor that had not been there before, long limbs, dark skin, the narrow heads of Dreth assassins, all 3 of them very still. Marcus was standing near the second one. He had a cut across his left forearm that was bleeding through his jacket sleeve, and his hair was slightly out of place, and that was the full extent of the visible damage. He looked at her first, checking, not greeting, scanning her face and arms and posture the way he had scanned the room earlier, fast and thorough. You have a scratch on your cheek, he said. We should move. She reached up and touched her cheek. There was a thin line there, barely anything. She hadn't even felt it. She stared at him, at the blood soaking into his sleeve, at the absolute stillness of his expression, at the 3 Dreth on the floor behind him. You're bleeding, she said. And she was surprised by the sound of her own voice, which came out quieter than she intended. Yes, he said. He tore a strip from the inside lining of his jacket and wrapped his forearm with it, one-handed, tying it off against his teeth. It took about 8 seconds. Station security will lock this room down in about 2 minutes. I want us in the east corridor before that happens, because if there's a 4th one they'll use the lockdown as cover. Move with me. She moved with him, and she did not walk 3 steps ahead this time. She walked beside him, matching his pace, because something in her body had made that decision before her mind caught up to it. In the east corridor. Under the white lights, she looked at him again, really looked, not the dismissive glance she had been giving him since he arrived. She looked at the scars that disappeared under his collar, at the hands that had done whatever had been done to 3 Dreth assassins in total darkness, at the calm that had not broken once, not even slightly. Asterisk, you knew. Asterisk, she said. Asterisk, before the lights. You already knew. Asterisk. Asterisk, I suspected. Asterisk, he said. Asterisk, there's a difference. Asterisk. Asterisk, and if you had been wrong. Asterisk. Asterisk, then I would have apologized for the inconvenience and you'd have had a story to tell about the embarrassing human. Asterisk, he said. And there was something in his voice that was not quite humor but was close to it, very dry, very quiet. Asterisk, being wrong costs me some dignity. Being right and saying nothing costs you a lot more. Asterisk. Elyara looked at the wall for a moment. She thought about the word asterisk, insufficient asterisk, the word she had used in the briefing room that morning, said in a tone that was meant to end conversations. She did not say anything about it. She just kept walking. The safe house was not impressive. A small set of rooms in the outer ring of the station, behind a door that looked like a maintenance panel from the outside, with grey walls and functional furniture and no windows. It had been set up for exactly this kind of situation, the kind where impressive was a liability and invisible was the point. Marcus had swept it in under 4 minutes after they arrived, checked the vents, the walls, the floor panels, the corners, moving fast and methodical and saying nothing while he did it. Then he had declared it clear with one short nod and set a small device near the door that would alert him to any approach from outside. Elyara sat in the single clean chair in the main room and watched him do all of this. The scratch on her cheek had already been cleaned and sealed. Marcus had produced a small medical kit from his bag and taken care of it with the same brisk efficiency he applied to everything else. No ceremony, no reassurance, just quick and correct. He set 2 ration packs on the table between them, the kind that soldiers carried, dense and calorie-heavy and flavorless, slid one toward her and opened his own. She stared at it. Asterisk, I do not eat field rations. Asterisk, she said. Asterisk, you haven't eaten in 6 hours and you're running on adrenaline. Asterisk, he said. Asterisk, you'll eat it. Asterisk. She ate it, slowly, and with an expression that made her feelings about the experience very clear, but she ate it, and he ate his without appearing to notice or care about the taste, which suggested that this was simply how he had eaten for a very long time. The silence between them was not comfortable, but it was not hostile either. It was the silence of 2 people who had been through something together and had not yet decided what to do with that. Elyara was the one who broke it. She was royal, which meant she was trained to control rooms and conversations, and silence was only tolerable when she chose it. Asterisk, why did you volunteer for this assignment? Asterisk, she asked. Asterisk, the file says every other protection unit refused. You had the same information they had. You knew the Crimson Veil had already killed 3 guards, so why did you take it? Asterisk. Marcus set down the ration pack and looked at her with those steady brown eyes. Asterisk, because it was offered. Asterisk. Asterisk, that is not an answer. Asterisk. Asterisk, it is for me. Asterisk, he said. Asterisk, it was a job that needed doing and they offered it. That's enough reason. Asterisk. She stuttered him. Asterisk, you were not afraid. Asterisk. Asterisk, I was. Asterisk, he said, simply, without embarrassment, the way someone states a fact about the weather. Asterisk, I'm always afraid before an assignment. It's useful. It keeps the attention sharp. Asterisk. That surprised her. She had expected denial, or the performance of bravery that most beings put on when they did not want to look weak. She had not expected honesty, said that plainly, with no weight attached to it. Asterisk, what is Earth like? Asterisk, she asked, and she was not entirely sure why she asked it, except that she was in a grey room in a dangerous situation with a human she had dismissed that morning, and the world had become strange. Enough that questions felt more honest than silence. Marcus leaned back in his chair. Asterisk loud. Asterisk, he said. Asterisk crowded. It's a small planet for how many of us are on it. It has weather that tries to kill you in about 14 different ways depending on where you stand. Most of the animals in the deep water are things we still haven't fully catalogued because they live too far down, and it used to be at war with itself constantly. For most of our history, humans were the biggest threat to other humans. Asterisk. Asterisk, that sounds like a terrible place to be from. Asterisk, she said. Not cruelly, just honestly. Asterisk, it made us what we are. Asterisk, he said. And there was something in his voice that was not pride. Exactly, but was in the same neighborhood as pride. Asterisk, we don't have your people's speed, or the Kratha's armor, or the Solvari's mind gifts. We are soft compared to most species. We break easily, we get sick, we heal slowly. Everything in the galaxy is physically better than us in at least one way, asterisk. Asterisk, and yet you are here. Asterisk, she said. Asterisk, and yet, asterisk, he agreed. Asterisk, because we have something else. Something that doesn't show up in a physical assessment or a combat record. Your people have a word for the will to live. Most species do. But humans have something different. We have the will to continue even when we are losing. Even when the outcome looks certain and the cost is already too high. We have a specific kind of anger at the idea of stopping asterisk. El Yara was quiet. Asterisk, what do you call it? Asterisk. Asterisk, the closest word in your language would be something like stubborn refusal. Asterisk, he said. Asterisk, in ours we call it spite. It means you keep going not because you know you will win, but because something in you absolutely refuses to let the other side be the reason you stop asterisk. She turned the word over in her mind. Asterisk, spite. Asterisk, she said. Asterisk, spite. Asterisk, he confirmed. Asterisk, that sounds. Asterisk, she said after a moment. Asterisk, exhausting, asterisk. Asterisk, it is. Asterisk, Marcus said. Asterisk, we're used to it, asterisk. She looked at his arms, at the scars she could see below the rolled-up sleeve, the wrapped cuts still dark with dried blood, the older marks underneath that mapped years of impact and blade and fire. Asterisk, how many times have you been seriously hurt? Asterisk, she asked. He looked at his arms too, almost like he was counting. Asterisk, enough times that the doctors on my home base know my file without looking it up. Asterisk, he said. Asterisk, does it not make you want to stop? Asterisk. Asterisk, it makes me want to not get hurt again. Asterisk, he said. Asterisk, that's different. Stopping means the next person behind me doesn't have anyone in front of them. That's a worse outcome than me getting hurt, asterisk. El Yara looked at him for a long time after that. She thought about the guard she had grown up with, the Velsharan household knights, tall and proud, trained. Since youth in the forms of royal combat, they were magnificent, every one of them. They moved beautifully and fought brilliantly, and when the pressure became something they had not trained for, they adapted, and when adaptation was not enough, they retreated with honor. They would never have said what Marcus just said, not because they didn't mean it, but because it would not have occurred to them that retreating was worse than being hurt. Asterisk, your planet is strange. Asterisk, she said finally. Asterisk, our planet made us strange on purpose. Asterisk, he said. And this time there was something in his voice that was definitely a smile, even though his face barely moved. Asterisk, it's a feature, not a flaw, asterisk. She looked away, at the grey wall, and she thought about the morning, about the word asterisk insufficient asterisk, and about how she had used it with the confidence of someone who had not yet had a reason to question herself. She did not apologize, she was not ready for that, and he had not asked for it, but something in the set of her shoulders changed, very slightly, and if Marcus noticed, he did not say anything about it. They sat in the quiet room for a while longer, not comfortable, not hostile, just two very different beings in the same small space, having arrived at something that was not yet understanding but was at least the beginning of it. The extraction was supposed to be clean. Lord Sove had arranged it personally, a decommissioned freight transport docked in the station's lower bay, a route that ran through 3 dead corridors with minimal foot traffic, and a pilot that Sove had used twice before and trusted. The route had been shared with exactly 4 people, all of them inside the Royal Council, all of them vetted to the highest Concordat standard. Marcus had looked at the plan and said nothing negative about it. He had asked 2 questions, checked the transport schematics, and spent 20 minutes walking the first third of the route himself before coming back and saying asterisk, it'll do asterisk. El Yara had noticed that he never said things were perfect. He said things would do, or things were acceptable, or things were as good as available. She had initially read that as pessimism, but she was beginning to understand it was something else. It was honesty, the kind that didn't bother dressing itself up. They had been moving through the second corridor when the ambush hit. It came from both ends at once, not a rushed attack, not a desperate one, a planned, coordinated detonation of the corridor's lighting system followed immediately by a flash device that turned the world white for 3 full seconds. And when sight returned, there were 12 of them, spread across both ends and the ceiling mounts above, armed with pulse weapons and wearing the black segmented armor of Crimson Veil strike operatives. The pilot was already down. El Yara did not look too long at that. Marcus had her behind a support column before the white cleared from her eyes. He moved her the way water moves, fast and with no wasted energy, and then he was beside her, back against the column, assessing with his eyes. 12 operatives, pulse weapons that would go through most cover, a signal jammer that had already killed their comms. She could see the dead indicator on her communicator, and a drone, the size of a large fist, hovering near the ceiling, rotating slowly, its sensor eye passing across the corridor in long slow sweeps. It was keyed to Velsharan. Biosignatures. She could tell by the way it paused every time it swept near her. She was the target. The drone was there to make sure she could not hide. Talk to me. She said. Quiet, steady, surprising herself with how steady. 12, both ends, one drone, no comms, one way out and it goes through all of them. Marcus said. He was looking up at the ceiling, at the vents, at the column bases. And they have a mole. Someone in the council fed them this route, which means they knew our timing, our transport, and probably that I would be the only protection. Can we go back? They closed the rear access when they hit us. It's sealed. He said. We're in a box. She looked at him. What do we do? He was quiet for exactly 4 seconds. She counted, because she needed to count something. And then something shifted in his face, the same way a door shifts when a lock opens. The transport's power core is still active. It's 50 meters back in the bay. It runs on a compressed plasma cell. If I overload it from the secondary access panel, it'll generate an electromagnetic pulse big enough to knock out every electronic system in this corridor for about 90 seconds. The drone goes down. The pulse weapons jam. Their armor comms die. And then and then it's 12 of them and me with mechanical weapons in the dark. He said, as if this were a reasonable sentence, as if this were a workable plan. That will also knock out your equipment. Yes. And you would be fighting 12 trained operatives alone, in the dark, with no support. Yes. She stared at him. That is not a plan. That is a decision to die more slowly. It's a decision to give us a chance, he said, and his voice was not loud, not heroic, not the voice of someone giving a speech. It was the voice of someone who had already made their peace with the math and just needed to start moving. But I need you to do something first. When the pulse hits, they'll have about 30 seconds of confusion before they adapt. I need you to move to the maintenance hatch on the north wall, third panel from the left, and stay inside it and do not move no matter what you hear. I will not hide while you. Your Highness, he said, and he looked at her directly, fully, with those brown eyes that were never anything but honest. I cannot do this and protect you at the same time. I need you safe so I can move freely. If you're in danger, I will go to you instead of finishing the job. That is not a flaw, it is just what will happen, so I need you in that hatch. She held his gaze for a long moment. Then he reached into his bag and pulled out a secondary sidearm, compact, mechanical, no electronics, and he pressed it into her hand. And closed her fingers around it. If something comes through that hatch that isn't me, use this, aim at center mass, fire twice. I know how to shoot, she said. Good, he said, and something crossed his face that was very brief and very warm. I need you to be brave for about 4 minutes. Can you do that? She straightened, and her shoulder, still sore from the earlier graze she had taken in the bay, pulled tight, and she straightened anyway. I am a princess of the Velsharan Empire, she said. That's a yes, he said, and then he was moving, low and fast, back toward the transport bay. She got to the hatch. She counted. The pulse hit at 32 seconds. She felt it more than heard it, a deep thrum in the walls, like the station itself had taken a breath, and the corridor went dark and the drone fell from the ceiling with a hard metallic clatter and she heard the shouts of confusion from both ends. And then she heard Marcus. She could not see anything. She had one hand on the wall and one hand on the weapon and she listened, and what she heard was the sound of a human being who had decided that stopping was not an option. Fast movement, impact, a shout cut short, another impact, something heavy hitting the floor, 2 more, then a pause, then 3 more in rapid succession, and throughout all of it, no scream, no cry, no sound of defeat. Just movement and consequence. It lasted 4 minutes and 20 seconds. Then it stopped. Then she heard footsteps coming toward the hatch, uneven, slower than before. The panel opened. Marcus was standing there. He had a split above his right eye and was holding his left side in a way that suggested something was not right there, and his jacket was in worse condition than it had been. But he was standing, and he was looking at her, and his eyes were still steady. We need to go, he said, and his voice was slightly rough but still even. There's a secondary docking bay 2 levels down. I found a route before we left, 10 minutes on foot. He turned to lead. His left knee gave slightly on the first step, just slightly, and before she understood what she was doing, Alyara moved forward and put his arm over her shoulders. He looked at her, surprised, for the first time, actually surprised, the first crack in that unreadable face since she had met him. Asterisk, I am capable of. Asterisk, he started. Asterisk, I know what you are capable of. Asterisk, she said, and her voice was steady and she kept walking, taking some of his weight, and she did not look at him when she said it because she did not want him to see whatever her face was doing. Asterisk, walk asterisk. He walked. Behind them, 12 Crimson Veil operatives were very still on the corridor floor. They made the secondary bay in 9 minutes. The medical bay on the Concordat Central Hub was white and quiet and smelled like every medical bay in the galaxy, clean in a way that felt almost aggressive, and Marcus had been in it for 2 days before they let him sit up without a monitor alarming about something. He had 2 cracked ribs, a deep laceration above his eye that had needed sealing, and a pulled muscle in his left leg that the doctor said was the result of continuing to use it after it should have been rested. They said this in the tone of medical professionals who have seen this kind of thing before and are tired of it. Marcus thanked them and asked when he could walk without assistance. Asterisk, 3 more days. Asterisk, the lead. Doctor said, a tall Silvari female with pale gold skin and the calm expression of someone who could read the intent of the nearest 40 people at all times. Asterisk 2. Asterisk, Marcus said. Asterisk 3. Asterisk, she said. And she left before he could negotiate further. Alyara came on the second day. She did not announce it. She simply appeared in the doorway in plain robes, not the formal ones, the lighter ones that she wore when she was not performing the role of princess for an audience. She had 2 attendants in the corridor behind her, but she came in alone and she sat in the chair beside his bed without being invited, which was either a breach of etiquette or a statement of comfort, and Marcus was not. Sure which. Asterisk, you look better than you did. Asterisk, she said, looking at the sealed cut above his eye. Asterisk, I look terrible. Asterisk, he said. Asterisk, but better asterisk. Asterisk, yes. Asterisk, she agreed, which surprised him. He had expected a polite disagreement. Asterisk, the doctors say you are already pushing the recovery timeline asterisk. Asterisk, the doctors think I should rest more asterisk. Asterisk, the doctors are correct. Asterisk, she said, and there was something in her voice that was not quite commanding and not quite gentle, something sitting in between, something new for her. Asterisk, you will rest more asterisk. He looked at her. Asterisk, you've been talking to them about my condition asterisk. Asterisk, I have been checking on the status of my assigned protection unit. Asterisk, she said. Very precisely, very carefully. Asterisk, that is a reasonable thing for a principal to do asterisk. Asterisk, it is. Asterisk, he said, and the corner of his mouth moved in the way she had come to recognize as the closest he got to a visible smile. She looked at her hands for a moment, then she said, asterisk, the mole in the council has been identified asterisk. Her voice was flat and hard in a way that was different from her usual control. This was not composure, this was something covering a great deal of anger. Asterisk, it was not a council member. It was a Concordat senator, Senator Veth of the Preth Collective. He has been under Crimson Veil influence for at least 2 years. The Concordat Security Council arrested him this morning asterisk. Asterisk, good. Asterisk, Marcus said. Asterisk, he was one of the most respected voices in the Concordat. Asterisk, she said. Asterisk, he sat on 4 major committees. He had access to security routes across 12 stations. The extent of the damage is still being assessed asterisk. She paused. Asterisk, I trusted the process that trusted him. I thought the system was secure asterisk. Asterisk, systems have holes. Asterisk, Marcus said. Asterisk, that's not a flaw in you. That's just how systems work. The answer is better checking, not more trust asterisk. She looked at him. Asterisk, you are not very comforting asterisk. Asterisk, no. Asterisk, he agreed. Asterisk, but I'm accurate asterisk. Something in her expression shifted. She almost smiled. It was brief, quickly controlled, but it was there. Asterisk, I have been told that the tribunal requires my testimony in 4 days, regarding the events in the corridor, the gala, and the full sequence of the Crimson Veil's operation against my household asterisk. Asterisk, I'll be there. Asterisk, Marcus said. Asterisk, you are supposed to be resting. Asterisk, she said. Asterisk, I'll be there. Asterisk, he said again. Simply, finally, the way he said everything. She looked at him for a long moment, and she thought about the morning she had first seen him, standing in the briefing room with his kit bag and his unremarkable height and his scarred arms and his steady eyes. She thought about the word she had said, the one she had meant to close the conversation, asterisk insufficient asterisk, and she thought about the corridor, about 12 operatives and total darkness and a human who had decided that losing was not on his list of acceptable outcomes. Asterisk, I owe you an apology. Asterisk, she said. It cost her something to say it. She could feel it costing. She was a princess of an ancient empire. She had been raised to lead, not to correct, and the habit of certainty was deep, but she said it anyway, and she did not soften it or surround it with qualifications. Marcus looked at her. Asterisk, you didn't know me, asterisk. Asterisk, I judged you without knowing you. Asterisk, she said. Asterisk, that is different. And it was wrong, and I am sorry, asterisk. He was quiet for a moment, then he nodded, once, clean and simple. Asterisk accepted asterisk. No. Speech, no moment of triumph, no lengthy forgiveness, just asterisk accepted asterisk, and then the conversation moved forward, which was exactly how she would have wanted it if she had known to want it. The Concordat Tribunal was held in the Grand Chamber, a formal space with high ceilings and tiered seating for representatives of every member species, and a long open floor where testimony was given. It was designed to feel significant, because the things discussed there usually were. Aliara stood at the testimony platform in full formal robes, silver and violet, crown in place, everything correct. She was performing the role of princess today, because today the role was needed, but she was. Not only the role, and that was something she had not always been able to say. She testified for 90 minutes. She described the death threat, the assignment, the gala, the safe house, the extraction corridor, all of it. She gave times and details and observations with the clarity of someone who had been paying close attention throughout. And when she reached the corridor, when she described what she had heard in the dark while she was in the hatch with a weapon in her hands and 12 trained killers between her and any reasonable outcome, she did not spare the detail. The chamber was very quiet. She named Marcus by full name, rank, and world of origin. Sergeant Marcus Hale, Earth, Sol. System, human. She described what he had done with the precision she would use to describe a military campaign, because that was what it had been, conducted by one person, in the dark, against odds that no tactical system she knew would have assessed as survivable. When she finished, the chamber remained quiet for several seconds, which in a room full of alien dignitaries and military representatives was a significant silence. Then the presiding commissioner asked if she had anything to add before closing testimony. She looked across the chamber. Marcus was sitting in the gallery in his formal jacket, ribs still taped under it, the sealed cut above his eye a dark line against his skin. He was watching the chamber the way he always watched rooms, steady and measuring, and when her eyes found him he did not look away, he just looked back, same as always. She turned to the commissioner. Asterisk, I want it on the formal record, asterisk, she said, and her voice carried to every corner of the chamber, asterisk, that Sergeant Hale performed beyond every standard this council has ever defined, that he chose a post every other protection unit refused, that he sustained injury that would have ended most beings and did not once consider stopping, and that the Velsharan Empire formally recognizes his service and his courage. Asterisk. She paused. Asterisk, and I would like it noted that his courage is of a specific kind, the kind that does not come from being certain of victory, it comes from refusing to accept defeat. I had not understood that kind of courage before. I understand it now. Asterisk. After the tribunal, in the wide corridor outside the chamber, Lord Sove caught up to her with a data tablet. Asterisk, the council has prepared the formal paperwork for the end of the threat assessment period. If the senator's network is dismantled, the immediate danger to you is significantly reduced. We can arrange a formal release for Sergeant Hale by the end of the week. Asterisk. Aliara took the tablet. She looked at it. She looked at the form with its neat blank fields and its formal language. Asterisk, the senator's network is not fully dismantled. Asterisk, she said. Asterisk, there are still active cells. The security assessment is not complete. Asterisk. Lord Sove looked at her carefully. Asterisk, that is true, but, asterisk. Asterisk, then the threat assessment period has not ended. Asterisk, she said, and she handed the tablet back to him. Asterisk, my assigned protection remains in place. Asterisk. Lord Sove looked at Marcus, who had stopped a few paces behind them. Then he looked at Aliara. Then he looked at the tablet. Asterisk, of course, Your Highness, asterisk, he said, in the tone of a man who understood everything and would say nothing about it. She walked on, and Marcus fell into step beside her, not behind, not in front, but beside, at the same pace, covering the same ground. Asterisk, you heard that, asterisk, she said. It was not a question. Asterisk, yes, asterisk, he said. Asterisk and asterisk. Asterisk, and I'll need to review the updated threat assessment files, asterisk, he said. Asterisk, and you have a diplomatic reception at 1700 hours that I want to walk through before you attend. Asterisk. She looked at him, at the steady brown eyes, the unreadable face, the absolute reliable consistency of a person who simply kept going, and something in her chest that had been tightly held for a very long time released, just slightly, like a door opening a crack to let in air. Asterisk, then let us go over the route, asterisk, she said. And they walked, together, down the long bright corridor of the station that floated between the stars, while somewhere in the dark spaces of the galaxy the crimson veil licked its wounds and the work of the future waited, patient and certain, for the two of them to be ready for it.